Good evening, Sunday evening again. It's amazing how quickly these shows come again. Welcome to the top 50 classic adventures of all time. I am your co-host Chris, along with my cyber sidekick Rick. Rick, say hi to the people out there.
Hey, folks, we're glad to be back.
Yes, we are back. Did we ever really leave? I
Not
mean,
really. Did we? We're hard to get rid of, you know?
yeah, maybe we sort of left everything. Anyway, we have when do we not have an exciting show for you guys tonight? But we do have an exciting show because we are actually going to get into our top 50 countdown. We teased it last time where we just talked about like stuff and we just talked about the show and everything. But we're actually going to count down number 50 through 46 tonight. And we have, first of all, we have some amazing, well, hopefully amazing transitions and graphics and stuff to amaze you with. Yes, fingers crossed. Bear with us. We do not have a special guest tonight because we just want to make sure that all the technical stuff kind of works out and everything's good. We already have a really good lead on a guest for our next show, which is going to be at the end of March. Yeah, so basically the numbers have been crunched. I handled all the number crunching and everything, and I am actually, this is what's really cool. Rick, maybe you want to talk about this a little bit, but I'm
Yeah,
the only one who knows the top 50 list. Rick
that's right.
refuses to know what the entire 50 wants to, he just wants five at a time.
Yeah,
So that like if he's captured and he's
you know,
tortured that he won't give up the list and
yeah.
everything. So he's
Don't
worried.
give them
He's
any ideas, Chris. But yeah, it's
yeah,
truth in advertising. Chris offered to share the list with me, but I thought it would be more fun if I found out more or less along with the audience. Now I will be finding these numbers out five at a time, I guess a day or two before our shows,
yeah.
but
Just so he can prep a little bit
yeah, we
and
do
and
do
know what
some
he
prep
needs to
here,
talk
folks.
about.
But yeah, just in case some obscure adventure comes our way, we want to be able to brush up on it. But
Yeah.
I like to think my memory's, good, but it's getting like a cloth bag full of water as I get older. So
So and
yeah,
clearly
this is
you have
gonna
no
be fun.
willpower. You have no willpower if you get tortured. So
Oh
like
yeah, no,
you would sing like a canary apparently.
that's
So
right. No, you
so
you
okay.
hand me a snack bar and that's about all it takes.
And it's all over. Well, before we get started, so a couple of quick things. So first of all, if you guys haven't checked out on BackerKit right now, we have the Purple Planet, Adventures in the Purple Planet and Beyond. What I like to call a Purple Planet celebration, because not only is it crowdfunding for an awesome hardcover of Purple Planet, the original reprint, and a bunch of new stuff, but there is just a ton of there's eight additional third-party publishers who are joining the fund, and they've got their own Purple Planet tie-in products that they're doing too. So go check it out on BackerKit. Elena already threw it in the chat there, so if you guys haven't checked it out or backed it, look at that. And also at the same time, we're running a crowdfunding campaign for the Roll20 adaptation of the DCC RPG core rulebook and six adventures, and that has funded. And now it's gonna happen. So if you were on the fence and you weren't sure about that one or not, you might want to go check that one out as well. So those couple of announcements are done. Before we jump into number 50 here, I just want to say that so in crunching all the numbers, so we ended up with 31 panelists officially. We did squeak in a couple of last panelists there at the last to kind of push us over the 30 mark. So I originally wanted 50 panelists to keep everything kind of the numbers right, but it just didn't work out. But very interesting. And again, we're going to get into a lot more of this probably in our last show in
Yeah.
December. But there were 209 different adventures received at least one vote in this. So it's kind of interesting. So we're doing the top 50, but there was 159 that didn't make the list. A lot of things just got one vote. I was pretty pleased, actually very pleased with the way the whole list kind of shaked down. I looked at it and I was like, this is actually, I'm very proud of this list. I think this would stand up there. I think lots of opportunities to talk about what made it, what didn't make it, and the
Hmm.
positions and everything. And I think we're going to jump right into that. Like tonight, we're going to get right into some things where we're going to talk
Yeah.
about some surprises and everything. But yeah, so really excited. Before we get started, Rick, do you have any things that you want to add to get
No,
people excited?
I'm just mainly psyched to let the list roll. And again, you're going to get our unfiltered comments, folks, good and bad, our impressions and surprises, as you're surprised, we'll kind of be sharing our surprises with you. So
Yeah. So, all right. So, and of course, throw in your comments in the chat as always. If you have
mhm.
any questions, we'll be more than happy to try and answer them. And if not, just put in silly comments, or if you agree, disagree, or what you would have put at a different number. Anything like that. We're just gonna have a lot of fun. Just to let you know how we're gonna do this, we're basically going to unveil a number with some fancy transitions and everything. Fingers crossed. And then Rick and I are going to talk about that particular number. We'll talk about it for 10 minutes or so, whatever, and then we'll go reveal the next one and everything. And by the time we get to the end of the show, we will have revealed 5 of them, and then we'll have we can put up a little summary sheet at the end to kind of show what this week's this month's, I guess I would say, 5 would be. And then we're gonna go from there. So
Yeah,
so I
that's a
guess
good point. So we'll try to keep a rolling tally for week to week as much as we can. After a
yep.
while, the list is going to get long, but we're going to try to at least share sizable pieces of the list so people can, if you tune in next time, you can see what came before, etc.
Exactly. We'll try and probably do it in like 10 at a time, probably
Yeah,
is
I
what
think we're
we'll
going to have to
probably
do it in
do.
bites, but
Yeah. And then maybe when we get halfway through, we'll throw up a summary or something to that. So all right, without further ado, people already there asking to let it roll. So let's get started with our first one.
let it roll.
Number 50.
All right. So we're good to go. Okay. Uh, so Rick
There
and I,
we
we
have it.
we can't hear like when the transitions happen or anything. So we're just gonna figure this out as we go along. So hopefully we're not talking over the announcement. So number 50. So we are kicking it off with a third edition adventure,
Yeah.
which again, I'm not really excited about. I would prefer my classic adventures to probably be a little bit older, but let's be honest. Some of the adventures in the third edition era are 20 plus years old at
Yeah.
this point. But I don't know. For number 50, Red Handed Doom, in my opinion, of all the third edition modules that were put out by Wizards of the Coast, Red Handed Doom is my favorite and I think the best. So I'm pleased that this actually snuck in there and made the list. But Rick, give us your thoughts. What do you think about this
Sure.
this choice?
Um, and yeah, just to riff off of what you said, Chris and I just talked a little bit about what makes a classic adventure, time wise. And I guess I looked at it as third edition back or maybe pre 2000 and in a perfect world, pre like 1990, but pre 2000, I think to be sure. But anyway, this one, I have no problems with this being on the list. This was on my top 50 list. It wasn't number 50, but it was in there somewhere. So, a wonderful campaign. I'm going to call it a campaign rather than an
Yeah,
adventure because it's really multiple adventures bound in one. I've never played this through as a DM, but I love the concept. And I think honestly, what I like about it most, Chris, is it really presents a well structured out war campaign in that
yeah,
the D&D, there's been some adventures with backdrops of wars, and there's certainly been war systems as like, battle system and things like that for fighting with a lot of miniatures. But from the TSR folks, there wasn't really a lot as far as actual war adventures where the war was the main thing. And as a person who ran a war campaign at one point, because I always wanted to, it's challenging.
yeah,
And I really liked the way this adventure breaks down things into bite-sized pieces and missions. And, you're given clear objectives like destroy the bridge before the bad guys cross.
yep,
Um, and, on the good side too, there's lots of town development here and NPC development. So afterward, if the characters want to settle down somewhere, or they've made relationships with, all these different NPCs they come across in this adventure, I think that's a good aspect of it. And from what I remember, kind of most of the sub adventures in here had like sort of like a boss, like they'd have,
yeah,
humanoid boss or the different bosses. And at one point you have to fight a lich, so they give you a little change of pace because you go and fight, go into the lich's lair and you do that for kind of like one episode. So you get all these sort of like escalating bosses, and you get that Wild West feel where you're, taking out the bad hombres and working your way up the food chain. And it's like, I like that. So yeah, for those reasons, I think it's really solid. It's a very solid 50.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. A lot of combat. Again, I've never actually
Hmm.
run this as a game master. I was deep into already like another third edition campaign at that point, and I was just like, we were not really, but it was really good. I had a really good friend who ran a lot of adventures, and this one would have been near the top of his list, I think. He did not participate in our survey. Thinking back to it now, he would have been a good person to probably reach out to. But yeah, I just remember him always talking about the Amazing, and I remember picking it up basically on that recommendation, and really kind of being blown away. I remember one of the key things I remember is the designer notes. I don't know if you remember the designer notes in it, and and
Mm.
and as an adventure writer myself, and I ate those up, and
Oh
I
yeah.
really wish that more would have done that, like that more products would have done that. And a
Hmm.
lot of it was designer notes, but it was also like advice to the game master on how to run
Yeah.
this, and the pacing, and not overwhelming the characters. But then there was actually some, this is why we did this, this is why we chose this big bad and everything.
Hmm.
So that's the part that I really remember, and I almost was
Yeah.
like almost want to like pull this one back out and reread it just for those designer notes, and and
Hmm.
and kind of learn some lessons on it. I also remember it was, we've talked about this a lot of time about the mega dungeon. I love the mega dungeon, but
Hmm.
the mega dungeon can bore you, and you can get bogged down in it. We've talked about Temple of Elemental Evil ad
Hmm.
nauseum about how that just, you get down to level 2, level 3, it really starts to kind of wear
Yeah.
on you and kind of drag and everything. This campaign adventure, because I think it was 128 pages long or
Hmm.
148 pages,
Yeah.
something like that. It was small dungeons. It was it
Yeah.
was it
That's what
was
I mean.
very small
Bite-sized
dungeons.
pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, little like
Sure.
bite-sized pieces, and there were different environments, and they had different feel to them and everything, and
Yeah.
it was not samey. I mean,
No.
you were
No.
fighting hordes and hordes of humanoids for the most part, but they had other, there was other
Yeah.
creatures too. There were giants, and there were,
Oh yeah.
hellhounds and stuff, and like you said, there was the undead part.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
And
I
different
mean, I thought,
environments too,
yeah, yeah,
I I know there's an encounter in like a fen with a
yep,
hydra.
yep,
You've got more castle type fortification, fortress type
yeah.
encounters. You've got, like I said, the one encounter that I love where you're bringing down a bridge. There's the Lich Dungeon. There's a real variety of monsters, and I think if you were to play this thing straight through, you could easily occupy a year or more. I
Oh
think
yeah,
going through this,
definitely.
no
Yeah,
problem.
yeah. I think this one,
Maybe two
but
years or
yeah,
something.
this one back in the third edition days, combats were not quick
Yeah.
in third edition by any
Yeah.
stretch of imagination, and there were a lot of really big combats in this. And yeah, I'm
Mhm.
thinking this one was definitely a year. Like if you played like twice a month, like at least a year. I'm
Yeah.
thinking probably even more. Again, depending on, you can certainly gloss over areas and stuff like that, and you could certainly, storytell and everything. But yeah, you're right. I mean, just the perfect, it wasn't really an adventure with a backdrop of war. You were really part of the war. The characters are really active participants in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Dragonlance, you weren't really as an active participant as much.
Hmm.
In that classic series, it was more that the war was kind of going on around you. And I think
Yeah.
the other one where you're really an active participant was the Bloodstone series. So it'll be curious to see if any of those other ones show up on our list,
Yeah.
and where they kind of stack up with this one, because you're right. I mean, it's the roots of D&D are the battle, the war, and everything, and it's
Yeah.
it's surprising that not more adventures kind of use this theme in this backdrop. So
I think it's just hard to pull off, but this one did it well.
yeah.
And the stakes of the war were incorporated well. And that one of the kind of the end of one of the early encounters, this settlement that you've grown to learn about and learn the NPCs, from this place basically ends up getting it falls to the humanoids. So like right away, you're introduced to a place, you kind of have some time to get to know the people of the place, and then the place falls to the humanoids. So right away the stakes are laid out,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like the PCs are given some, and the players are given some real stakes, that they're fighting for. And like you said, they're active participants that what they do can change the course of the war. And I don't recall seeing many modules that did that, or adventures that have done that. So
All
props
right.
to them.
So that is our number 50,
Yeah.
Red Hand of Doom. So now we're going to move to the next number.
Number 49.
All right.
All right,
So
there it is.
there it is.
Wow.
Okay. So this is one where this is not one of my favorite adventures. I will be honest with you. Again, cool theme. Here's the thing. The elevator pitch of this module, you're like, oh yeah, give me some of that. More
Mhm.
Isle of Dread, definitely. The execution of this module, yes, please execute it. I think that's a great idea. So, but yeah, so Rick, why don't you lead off, since I know you're actually a pretty big fan of this module. Why don't you lead off with your thoughts on
Yeah,
on
and I
on
don't I don't disagree with anything you said. I think now you have to understand growing up as a kid, I grew up on stop motion animation. I wanted to be a stop motion animator growing like that was my, people wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a T-Rex animator. So watching King Kong with the original Skull Island and everything was something I grew up on and was very in love with. And this was obviously that. This was basically putting the PCs on Skull Island. So I was licking my chops when I saw this come along, back in the day. But I agree, it's a hard adventure. There's places I wish had been executed better for sure. And it's lethal. It's a brutal attrition adventure.
yeah,
Characters are not just going to walk in here and do one session and blow off their best spells and walk out victorious. So they're gonna, and Gygax made it that way. In a way, I look at it as a counterpoint to the Tomb of Horrors, where the Tomb of Horrors was made as a sort of brutal test of traps, and this was made as a brutal test of attrition, basically forcing even super powerful characters to really ration out their magic and their magic items, and no matter how well equipped they are, what level they were, if you looked at the initial notes from Gygax in this, they were just so brutal about how you would lose spells and you weren't safe anywhere, and spell books would start, rotting because of the condition. I mean, it was
yeah.
just
The
classic
environment,
Gygax in that it
the
was so over
environment.
the top as far
Yeah,
as, the DM hosing you that you almost have to laugh when you read it now, that I can't imagine any adventure being written like that now, you know. But there are also some wildly creative areas in this, dungeon. It's just I looked at it as a possible glimpse into, the Greyhawk dungeon, the infamous Greyhawk dungeon, and I really wish Gygax or any of the venerable writers would have come out with other levels, of the Greyhawk dungeon and given us a little more look into kind of like what might have been as far as,
yeah, yeah.
that original
Totally
dungeon.
agree. Totally agree. A couple of things I remember about this adventure. Obviously, gargantuan apes. I mean, not just one, like several. I remember that. I remember there was an ambush by, I believe, tribal warriors in the beginning where there's like
Oh yeah.
literally hundreds of them throwing spears and shooting arrows or throwing javelins at you or something like that. And it was like literally like round one, you take 200 spear throws. And even though they only hit on a 19 or a 20, like,
Mhm.
I think the thought was that the game master was supposed to roll all those attack rolls, and by the law of averages, you were going to take damage basically. So I do remember that. I also remember at the end of the adventure there was a really cool deception where when you get the
Yes.
MacGuffin at the end
Yes.
and you get teleported back to wherever you started from, I get to Tensor, I think it was. Um, and then but you're not, you think you're back there, but it's actually a ploy by demons. Like they
Mhm.
set this whole up elaborate thing to try and trick you into giving it up or something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't read this one in a long time, but I do remember that like being kind of the ultimate kind of, oh, you think you won, like no, you didn't
Right.
win kind of deal.
Correct.
So
Yeah, because they're trying to steal what is it, the Crook of
the
Rayo. They're trying to
Cucureo,
steal.
yeah.
And of course, you do get to meet Tensor right at the beginning of the
Yeah,
adventure. There's that.
yeah. There is that. There is totally that. So, and hey, props, Gygax. It didn't take him long to get on our top 50 list. We'll see if he makes it
True.
on the list again. I'm not so sure. No, I think he's going to make it on the list numerous more times. But But yeah, so I think, props for that. And again, I think it was, it was one of those things where, that with the ape, I get it. It was Isle of the Ape, you have the ape on it. But I almost feel like if there was a big T-Rex on the front of that
Hmm.
module, if that would have maybe, made it understand a little bit more. It's hard to say. I
Yeah.
mean, but you're right. I mean, I grew up on those monster movies too. I mean, in growing up in New Jersey, the local channels, it was Thanksgiving they used to show those, or on
Oh yeah.
Thanksgiving and the day after, the Thursday and the
Yeah.
Friday, they used to show
Yeah.
all those
King
movies.
Kong, Mighty Joe Young, all
Yep,
that stuff.
yep, all those goodies and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely inspiration where I
That
used to
was
just
back in the day where you had to catch it when it came around that year, or you didn't
yes.
see it for another year.
Yeah,
There was
yes.
no going to Netflix and just playing it on
Yep,
demand.
or
If
YouTube or
Yeah,
whatever,
if you
and
missed
everything.
whatever it was that came out on
Yep,
Thanksgiving, if you didn't see, Babes in Toyland or King Kong or whatever they played on Thanksgiving, it
yep,
was gone for a year,
yep.
basically.
Basically, yeah. Totally
Um,
true. Yeah. We're so spoiled these days.
right, I know. It's all on demand. But yeah, this was an interesting surprise. I did not think this would make it to the list, frankly.
I did not either. I did not think. Again, now we're at the very bottom of the list. So I mean,
Correct.
and if you look at, I've seen the numbers and everything. It was wafer thin between what would make the list and what did. And
Mm,
when we get to that final show, like I said, we're not going to talk about what number 51, 52 is
mhm.
for now, because we don't want to spoil the possibility that they could be on that show, but
Yeah.
on a later show and everything. But I think it's going to be real interesting to see at the end of it in December, like what just missed out or
Hmm.
what just made it across the finish line. I think it's
Yeah.
gonna be pretty fascinating. So
That is going to
um
be fun. That's going to be
yeah,
interesting.
so that was our number 49
49.
WG6, the Isle of the Ape, and I think we're gonna roll out our next winner next.
Number 48.
All right,
Oh, look
well,
at that.
yes,
Well,
so
we're
I
both
am
fans of this
well,
one.
I am happy this made the list, but sad that it's at number 48. But no, I mean, honestly, so this was a second edition AD&D back in the day. So this was, I think, second edition. This was 1995, I believe this came out. So I think this one flies under the radar from a lot of people because it's a
For
it's a
sure.
big fat box. It's not a book.
Hmm.
It is literally a campaign setting. It is an Underdark campaign setting. Done really well. It does have
Yeah.
its warts.
Yep.
I will be the first person to admit that, but boy, there's a pretty good story here. There is some pretty good NPCs here. There's some
Hmm.
really, really fascinating environments and some amazing big bads, and spoiler alert, no drow,
Yep.
which is amazing that they were able to pull that off, and that somebody at TSR has signed off on that.
Hmm.
But granted, this was back in the day, I think, when drow weren't as marketable as they are, shall we say, today,
Yeah.
where there's novels and novels upon them and everything. But I am really, really excited that this one made this. This is one of my favorite uh, boxes of campaign slash
Hmm.
adventure love out there. So, and Rick, I know you're a fan too. So,
I am. I
lay it
mean,
on.
talk about a sizable campaign. I mean, it's like you said, it's got its moments, but like here, here's an example of a really ambitious goal that
Yeah.
really kind of hits it. These were this was really, I think, one of the first attempts to kind of take another shot at like a Descent series,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
go for it. And I think they pull it off. There's lots of cool encounters. There's a lot of environments. You get lots of notes about how the Underdark races, work off of each other, which I
Yeah.
love. And one of the things I think is actually the most interesting, and I don't dislike it at all, is the fact that really the first third takes place above ground. You get a
Yep.
lot of stuff like you think that you instantly going under the earth, and they really gradually pull you down there where, first, you get some bandits and then you work your way into mines and you kind of gradually go deeper and deeper, which I think is cool. And spoiler alert, the final piece features the aboleth, which I think, is one of the coolest Underdark baddies there is.
Yeah.
Enough that, years ago when I wrote one of my Adventures for Goodman games, I had an aboleth as the heart of, one of the main villains of the adventure that I wrote, because I just think they're really cool. So anything that's got aboleth running the show is always going to, be a love letter to me. So like that's something I just think there's lots to love here. And like you said, it's totally below the radar. There's many, many folks who don't know this. And I think lots of folks today could go on eBay or someplace, get their hands, or buy the PDF for that matter, and just get
Yeah.
their hands on this thing. And even though it's second edition, there's lots to be plumbed here, lots of
Oh yeah.
cool ideas, that if just for an Underdark encounter that you could just pull out and use,
Oh
so
yeah. Yeah. There's I mean, like you said, there's the sandboxy, above ground portion, where you spend the first like 4 or 5 levels, and then you've got the long journey through Underdark, which is
Mhm.
classic, just like D1 and D2. You've got a city of Koatoan, which is amazing. And again, there's again lots of combat, but back in the day, we're still in the era here where you got, your XP was based on killing things and
Yeah.
getting their treasure. And so there was certainly a lot of combat, but there was a lot of little touches on things that just
Mhm.
made things just so much cooler, even though they might not have had a game effect and everything. You had the Rockseer elves, which was
Yeah,
kind of like a
yeah.
good a good Underdark elf, basically. Obviously, had deep gnomes. You had you hopefully you allied yourself with the deep gnomes in the beginning, but then there was a part where you could actually kind of like raid their catacombs, and maybe they wouldn't be friends with you anymore, but boy,
Mhm.
they had some really good magic items in there. And it's kind of like, I know. So it was really there was a fair amount of diplomacy there. And
Sure,
then when you
for
got to
sure.
the Koatoa, there was this whole cool subsystem of like this social collapse system, on how you didn't have to go and slaughter all of them. And actually, I think it was designed that you weren't supposed to go and slaughter all of them. Kind of like D2 Danger at Dunwater. You weren't really supposed to go in and slaughter all
Mhm.
the lizard folk, but you could. But there was this whole thing you could do. There's these other tasks you could do to kind of topple them and make them like really go insane and everything, and then kind of like get past them and get to your final objective and everything. There is so much to check this out. Like I said, I would recommend, even if you're ever thinking of doing like an Underdark kind of a campaign, or you're just a huge fan of the Underdark,
Yeah,
you should really pick this guy up in
yeah,
PDF, and give it at least a read through.
yeah.
This is one of the few mega dungeons I've read several times, and
Mhm.
and it's inspired me to do several adventures since then. So I can't say enough about this
No,
adventure.
there's
It's amazing.
lots of good stuff. I'm even thinking of the maps because I remember the
Yes.
maps. I'm going purely from memory here, but I remember the maps having like basically the characters could sort of choose which way they went.
Yep.
There were
Yeah.
kind of forks in the road where, you could go this way, or you encounter this race, or you could go this way and encounter, and which I love that too. Um, did you ever run this for anybody as a
I
DM?
have run like my own version of this. Like
Okay.
I basically, yes, the skeleton part. I took a lot of the really good parts of it,
Hmm.
basically. A lot of the Underdark parts of it, and have run it, but I've never run it like beginning to end. I don't know too many people have actually gone all the way through and finished it. I hear a lot of people have started it and get into book
Hmm.
two, and then it kind of peters out in book two, because it gets pretty crazy once you get to book three. And each of these books, there's 3 books in the box. They're each 64 pages. So I mean, that's 100 and
That's
what's
a
that,
lot.
196 pages. Is that about to, or yeah, am I doing my math right? Maybe 192, something like that. But that is a lot when you think about, like, the original Temple of Elemental Evil was 128 pages. So
Yeah.
this was 60 more pages of that. So it's like, I know that, this day and age, you get those 200, 300 page hardcovers that are
Yeah.
campaigns in that. But back in the day, 200 pages of material, plus there was monster manual
Hmm.
pages that came with it. There were all these handouts. Wow, the
Oh
wonderful
yeah.
handouts.
Oh
that
my
were like
God.
on that they were all like a separate booklet that you could rip the booklet up and hand them out to your
Yeah.
players and that, and they were all like, they looked like torn pieces of parchment and that, and they were,
Yeah.
it was amazing.
Oh yeah. No.
Yeah, and there
It-
was counters for the monsters. There were some battle
yeah.
maps that you could use for some of the set piece against.
Yeah.
It was well done. It was well thought out.
Yeah.
It was the kind of product that they really took a lot of time and a lot of care thinking, what do people want and what's going to give people value in this box? Because back in
Yeah.
the day, I think it cost $30, and that was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
Now, we drop $50 on a hardcover like it's no tomorrow.
Right.
Actually, even more than that. $50 it's $60 now. But you just felt like you were getting so
Oh
much
yeah.
material out of there, and just absolutely amazing. I remember when I bought this. We had a blizzard. I think it was the year that it came out, 95. I think it was January of 96. I think there was this blizzard where we got like 30 inches of snow. And literally we were like stuck in our houses for like two
Hmm.
days, like digging out and everything. I remember going in shifts digging out because the snow was so deep and everything. And I just remember I had this and I was reading it and I just couldn't wait to get back to it. And it was just like it was the perfect thing, cup of hot cocoa, and
Yeah.
then read another 20 pages of this amazing dungeon crawl, and just knowing that I've wanted this. I actually own two copies of it. No, it's not in Canada. Dan of the Dead. No, in New Jersey. That's what I'm saying. 30 inches of snow in New Jersey is a rare thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen often. And but it was just cool. I'll never
Mhm.
forget that. I'll never forget being stuck in the house, and but having this awesome thing to inspire me and everything. And I remember I bought a second copy on eBay
Mhm.
probably about 10 years ago, because I literally wanted to pull it apart. I wanted to pull it apart and use the pieces of it and everything,
Hmm.
and all the maps, and I wanted to mark everything up and all that because I don't want to like desecrate my regular copy, my wonderful copy that's probably beat up already too. But
It's funny. I just obtained one of the books to replace part. Like I basically somehow, I don't know what happened. I ended up with my box set has got, I think, had two of the three books or some
oh wow,
heresy. I lost one of the books somehow. So I had within the last couple of years, I went out on eBay and I replaced it. And let's be honest too, TSR came out with a lot of box sets, but as
they
box
did.
sets went, this was a solid box set. This
Yo, yeah,
was well thought out, well put together. Like you said,
yes,
they didn't go to the writers and say we need this in 4 weeks on this one. I'm pretty solid on that.
no.
This one shows its thought. So
Yeah, no, I think Carl Sargent, I think he was the only author on this. I think they
wow.
basically was just like they just said, go and come back in 6 months with an Underdark campaign
Yeah.
and
And
come
he
up
did
with
it.
some cool ideas and
So
stuff. And I'm guessing that's what he did.
yeah.
I don't know if he worked for TSR, if he was a freelancer at the time. That'd be an
Mm.
thing to kind of figure out. But no, I envision this where it's just like, hey, do an Underdark campaign and
Yeah.
get back to us in 6 months, and
And
he did, and he threw
yeah.
himself into it, and it came out great in my opinion. So yeah, no complaints there whatsoever. So
Yeah. No, no.
um
Very worthy number 48 for sure.
without a doubt, without a
Yeah.
doubt. So all right, let's truck along here and get to our next number.
All right.
Number 47.
All right. So this is
There it is.
surprising, I thought. I was a little bit surprised by this, but well, let me let you give your thoughts first before I jump in on this one.
Sure. And then we've talked about this before, obviously, but I'm thrilled to see it on the list. I frankly hoped would be higher on the list because I really like this one. Obviously one of the classic Giant series, but this one in particular has really grown in stature on my mind of all the three Giant modules. We talk about how some adventures kind of ebb and flow over the years,
Yeah,
and it's really interesting to go back and read these classics and realize something's better than you thought or not as good as you thought. But this one just gets better, better and better. I've always said what I think the real strength of this module is the atmosphere.
yeah,
To me, the best adventures, and it's hard to pull this off, is when the characters are put someplace very different, a really interesting different place. We've all done that, goblin encounter on the road thing. It's almost kind of like a trope for a good reason because it's a good warm-up encounter for the night or whatever. But how many times have we done that? But here, the fact that the characters are put in this glacial and Arctic environment, they're put on this glacial rift where there's winds howling and snow and these perilous cliffs, and then the rooms build off of that. So you have rooms
Yeah.
with falling icicles and ice toads and creatures you don't see often in those days, like the Yeti and the Remoras. That how often did you run into those? And all basic block and a wonderful room full of different blocks of ice and just these different things that play off of that environment. You're not just introduced to the environment, but the rooms work with it.
Yeah.
And the characters absolutely feel like they're not in Kansas anymore when they're in this. I think of all the giant modules, G3 promised a volcanic kind of environment and didn't quite deliver. You kind of got a dungeon, and
Yeah.
G1 has been, cited by some as being a bit pedestrian, because you're just kind of going through a fortress, but nobody can complain about the environment here.
No.
So
Yeah. Not at
that's
all.
what stands out to me and screams is just this awesome environment.
Yeah, totally agree. Ice toads were awesome. I mean, it's the first thing I think of this adventure. But yeah, I think of the icy pathways and the fact that again you could just fall off of those slopes. Like it was a dungeon, but there was the big rift part
Hmm.
was like you could just go to almost at any point you can just go rappel down the side or fall down the side and end up in the big huge rift area, and then there was several small like little encounter areas in there and everything. White dragons, obviously frost giants. So yeah, I mean this was obviously it was the first Arctic adventure since this was written back in 78, I believe, one of the first adventures written. And look at that, Gygax makes our list again so soon. uh but yeah, you're right. I mean it's all about the environment, but it's all about the, like you said, it's not just the environment. It's not just that it's really cold. It's not just that it's slippery and the wind and the visibility could be obstructed, but it was the way that the caves, the ice caves and everything, and you just felt like you were there.
Hmm.
And I think it was pulled up right. And again, it would have been nice for a few more, I think, cold and frost monsters. I think more like the ice toads. Who
Hmm.
who would have thought to make a toad an ice toad? Like I was like, of all the different things you could go into, it's
Yeah.
like ice lizard, but a toad, okay. But it worked, and again, the art certainly helped.
Oh yeah.
On the front cover of it, everything. And again, this is another one of those 8-page wonders, if I
Yeah.
recall, or maybe 12 pages. It might have been 12, but it was 8 or 12 pages. A lot of material. We just talked about an adventure that was
Hmm.
192 pages long. This
Hmm.
one did it all in 8 pages, and you
Yeah.
felt like you were there. You
Yeah.
you felt like your characters were in a completely different environment. And it made you want more. I mean,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I wanted 6 giant adventures. I was like, it's like after getting to 3, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is great. I'm like, I want a stone giant adventure, and I want a storm giant adventure, and cloud
And just
giants, and
so much in those 8 pages. I think you could milk a lot of sessions out of this.
yeah,
And just the map design really fascinates me. I could look all day at those maps
yeah,
because even the Glacial Rift map, it looks very non-linear, but it's actually a very linear, surprisingly linear
yep,
dungeon when you kind of
yep,
break it down as a DM and
yeah,
which I think is when the characters are there, there's such a sense of freedom. And yet all DMs know that it is easy. You don't want to railroad people, but it certainly is easier if the characters are on the tracks, so to speak.
yeah,
So this one, it splits the difference in a wonderful way that
yeah.
said
No,
I
I
can
I
just I
completely
love that.
agree.
I love that riff map. I can look at that like all day long.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you've got some 3D there. It's not just linear
Yeah,
dungeon, you've got some
yeah,
up and down too.
that's right. With the
Um
elevations,
yeah,
remember?
with the elevations and
Yeah.
everything, and it's like which is fascinating. Like I said, there's several opportunities where you get to that spot where you can go down to the
Hmm.
the lower level of the rift and everything, and that's, but like you said, giving the illusion of giving your players choices,
Yeah.
when they really don't have that many choices. So, but you just don't tell them that. I mean, they don't need to know that. So, but yeah, it's funny. So you'd mentioned how this one got better for you.
Hmm.
When we revisited the Giant series not too long ago. I think it was last year. It's probably about this time last year, actually.
Yeah, not that long
Um,
ago, right?
I'd always really liked this one. The other two came closer to this one after my review of
Hmm.
it. Like I never liked G1, and then I reread G1 last year, and I was like,
Hmm.
wow, I kind of like G1 now, actually, except for the Great Hall encounter, which was totally unbalanced. But besides that one encounter,
Hmm.
but so I actually feel that the other two Gs kind of came closer to G2 in my opinion.
Hmm.
But I still, if I have to pick them, I still put G2 there
Mm.
first. So yeah, I was very pleased to like you said, see this one make the list. Even though it's low, I think there's a really good reason why it's low, and I think it can be figured out. But the mere fact that it made it means that it was a good enough adventure that it made some folks lists where they called it out specifically.
Yeah, it
Um,
stand that shows that it stands on its own, you know.
exactly. And I think you're gonna see that a few more times in the next probably 10 picks or so, where
Yeah,
there's a few of those ones that are part of bigger series that
yeah.
kind of have stood out and have showed up for that. So
And that too, right? That was our conscious decision where we basically said we didn't want to limit people in their votes. If they
yeah,
wanted to break it out into a single adventure, we let them do that. If they wanted to
yeah,
say, G1 to 3 against the Giants, we
yeah.
let them do that. So it'll be interesting to see how these different permutations of some of these
Yeah.
longer series kind of break out.
Yeah, it'll be really curious actually because
Sorry.
um this is the case of this one in particular where it's part of a very beloved series G1 through
Hmm.
3, but also GDQ 1 through 7. And then there's the individual modules. So
Yeah,
literally it could show up theoretically it could show up 3 times.
yeah,
So this adventure in there. So, and again, we didn't want to limit folks on that. We
yeah.
wanted we wanted folks to kind of just pick what they thought the best was. We basically said if it was a published book, like you could put it on your list. And
Yeah,
if folks recall and we talked about this in our last show, the Dungeon Magazine top 30 list, the number one was GDQ 1 through 7. That was
yeah.
their number one overall adventure in that list 20 years ago. So again, yeah, the G's, the D's, and Q1, well loved
Oh yeah.
adventures, and I think we're gonna hear about them more coming up. So
Yeah, I think there's a reason they popped up in so many incarnations over the years, and
yeah,
in different combinations you have a good thing, you bring it back. So,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's get we're down to the last one for this evening.
ooh,
So
all
let's
right, let
let's
it
get to the
rip.
last reveal and talk about the last adventure.
Number 46.
All right,
Oh, there we go.
another surprising one. I thought D2 Shrine of the Koatoa, right into my wheelhouse, and I know yours as well, Rick, too. This is one of those. I mean, this module is usually is in my top 10 or hovering right around 10. I love this adventure. I think we just talked about atmosphere
Yep,
and environment, and
yep.
this one has it in
Oh
ribbons.
yeah.
I mean, this one it's got that Lovecraftian feel to it. Some of the
Hmm.
descriptions
Hmm.
of the cave system when you first walk in the shrine.
Yeah,
This one's got it, and what is not to like about a shrine of literally hundreds of fish dudes? I
yeah.
mean, I can't get enough of this and everything. So yeah. So give us your thoughts, Rick.
Yeah. No, I totally echo. I mean, a lot of what I just said about Glacial Rifts totally applies here because when the characters first kind of walk, and of course, Gygax sets the stage with the slugs and the entrance, but when the characters open up into the shrine room
Yeah.
for the first time, talk about being someplace, really interesting. And I remember in my first read through of the Descent series, getting this module and just thinking the last thing I think I expected underground was fishmen. And just to run into this, it was so crazy and imaginative, and like you said, just almost like Lovecraftian, it had that deep ones kind of thing going on
Yeah,
that I just was like, what? You know, and it really kind of forces what could have been a sidetrack. It forces the characters to play in a different way too, because there's just so many fishmen
yeah,
that the characters aren't necessarily going to just waltz through here and, kill everything on sight because they could just be swarmed by, hundreds of fishmen. You can't do it. So at least the groups I brought to this thing, they tended to stealth their way through it.
oh yeah,
Some tried to
oh yeah,
blow through quickly, some tried to snoop around and see what they could find. I always ended up with different approaches, it seemed, but it was really cool. And as we've discussed in the past on Talking to Sar, just such a well-realized race in the Koatoa
yep,
that a lot of times you see takes on humanoids where they do what I call the Flash Gordon approach, where they just say, well, this is a goat man, or this is a dog man, or this is whatever. And it comes off as just a goblin with a different head.
yep,
But no, the Kowato are very well realized. You
yeah,
have their religious structure, you have all these interesting abilities they have, and the type of vision, and their, the sticky shields and the interesting weapons.
yep,
And you get this glorious like 2-page description of the Koatoa that's just Gygax at his finest, I think, there, just
yes,
singing out a race. That is the way you design a race, folks,
yes,
I
totally.
mean, if somebody had to tell me, like, you give me an example of a well-designed and realized D&D race, the Koatoa would be like on the plate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. 100%. Everything that you say is dead on. I mean, from the description, I think the impressive thing that I always remember about this adventure is you walk into that. I think it's adventure area number 4, the basically like the reverse ziggurat, the shrine,
Yeah.
essentially. And the shrine can seat like 2 or 3 thousand humanoids. And you're like, you walk in here and you're like, well, if they created something that can sit 2 to 3 thousand humanoids,
Yeah.
it might mean there's 2 to 3 thousand
Yeah.
humanoids nearby. And it's like, you have those first couple of encounters, you're like, whoa, there really could be like a whole lot of these guys. And so I thought that was, like you
Yeah.
said, the stealth thing, I think happens really quickly.
Because
Because
you get that
unlike,
right in the beginning.
yes, exactly. Like you
So
walk in, it's like, that's
smart
like right
characters will
there.
realize very soon they've got to
Yep.
play it
Yep.
quiet.
If you didn't go meet the sea goddess herself by putting your hand on the claw and whatever, like yeah, that was the other realization. Either you were like in front of her and dead, or you were looking at the realization that there could be 2 or 3 thousand of these critters coming down on us.
Yeah.
And like you said, you got those little hints. You had the boat keeper, the guy who was the little skiff guy, where you were like, you
Hmm.
start getting hints
Great
about what
encounter.
you were
Such a
coming
good
up to.
encounter.
Yeah, yeah, where you're getting hints of what you were getting into.
Yeah.
And again, it's the actual, facility is, it's a lot of barracks and a lot of living chambers and a lot
Yeah.
of, it's not particularly interesting, but like you said, you get the stealth aspect of it and trying to figure out, how do you get through this, because this was blocking the route to the vault.
Hmm.
And you needed to get through that somehow. And
Yeah.
it was just fascinating. It was just a fascinating interlude kind of
Yeah.
in the journey, and it really
Yeah.
did break up that journey. They were talking about how it's like you don't want things to be
Hmm.
the same. This
Yeah.
definitely was not the same from what you were seeing. This was
Yeah.
not, giant slugs and deep
No,
gullies
no. It was
and
part of the
mind
delight
flayers.
at the Descent series because after reading, I remember reading D1, and that was one of the very first adventures I ever bought. And there were so many caves with so many typical underground creatures, the
Yeah,
purple worm and this and that I remember thinking when I saw there were like 2 more components to this series, saying, like, where are they going to go from here?
yeah,
What are they
yeah,
going to do? And I knew the draw we were going to get to them, but I said, where are we going to go with this? And then you get this just fascinating interlude as part 2 that just totally takes it off the rails. I mean, in hindsight, if I had to pick any bone with this, and it's hard for me to pick any bones with this, would be that it just, like you said, it feels more like a setting than an adventure. Like I almost wish the characters had to find something in here that would
yeah,
help them fight the Drow, or basically given more. And I've done this as a DM in this module, basically kind of giving the characters a little more reason to poke around and not simply scoot their way through from one passage to not just kind of blow through, because it's such a cool place. You want to give them that reason to go poking around. But yeah, it's just oh, so much atmosphere in here. It's great, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I agreed. And you had the crazy cleric assassins,
Yeah,
multi-class. I mean, which is like cleric assassin. Like what is
yeah.
that? And it's like this is crazy. And the prince, and they're like, and they were high level. I mean, I think the prince had like 100 hit points or something. Like back in the day, 100 hit point monster was
Yeah.
like, that was purple worm territory, basically. So
Hmm.
so yeah, it was fascinating. And I'm really glad this one made the list. Again, I would
Yeah.
have liked to see it up there a little higher. This one's it's definitely higher on
Oh
my
yeah.
list, but
Mine too. Mine too.
when you open up the voting to 31 people, I mean,
Yeah.
you get the gamut of
Mhm.
votes and stuff like that, and that's when it's nice to see that we got enough panelists where one vote didn't put something on a list. It had to make the list a couple of times, at
Yeah.
least 3 times at least, to get on there. And again, we're going to talk about all those numbers. I keep saying this in December. We're gonna jump down. We're gonna jump into the stats a little bit in December and talk about some different fascinating things. But yeah, really really pleased to see this one make it. And at least it's on there. And how about that? Our first 5 adventures that we unveil tonight, 3 of them
Right?
by
Three.
Gygax. Three by
Wow.
Gygax. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's and a third edition and a second edition adventure. So
Which is good.
um
That's interesting. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, we got a
So
nice mix. I think that if this five is any example, folks, here we go. We're on a good path. So
yeah, no, I think we're on a really good path. I think it's only gonna get more exciting from here.
cool.
So strap in
Yeah,
for an
it only gets
exciting,
better.
exciting ride. So yeah, so just to sum
50
up
through 49, 46, right?
yep, our 50 through 46. So 50 we had Red Hand and Doom. 49 we have Isle of the Ape, WG6. 48 Night Below. 47 G2, the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. And 46 D2 Shrine of the Kotoa. I know we have a summary list. Elena, if you want to throw that up there so that people could see it. While Rick, why don't you give them a couple of public service announcements, if you
Sure,
would?
folks. Well, as always, we're glad that you could join us for this new show that we're sharing with you. We're always happy to join you on these Sunday nights. Thank you, as always, for watching. If you're just tuning in on Twitch, give us a follow, give us a like. If you're watching us later on YouTube, please subscribe. That helps us. And not only during the broadcast, which we love, but even later on YouTube, don't be afraid to comment. We love reading all your comments, hearing what you have to say. And if you think something's higher or lower than you'd like on the list, tell us what you think should be in that place. We want to hear you're kind of informal voters too, so give us your opinions.
Yeah, I thought about that. First of all, I'd love to see folks' top tens in
Oh yeah,
in the chat
totally.
or in the comments. I was thinking about we should have some sort of a people's choice
People's
ranking or
choice.
something.
That's interesting.
Maybe we'll try and do something at the end after we reveal like numbers 5 through 1. Maybe we'll set up some kind of a poll or
Yeah, maybe
something where
before the
we can
last
do
show,
something.
we'll
Yeah, my thought is it's like, oh, crunching those numbers would be just wow. But I could probably set something up in a Google Sheet or something that might be able to do it. Or maybe we
yeah,
can, I don't know, maybe we can limit
separate
it
vote for the
somehow.
people's choice.
Yeah, because it was amazing. Like I said, 209 different selections from our panelists, and there was some truly obscure things out there.
Yeah.
Purely some people were favorites. It was fascinating to see things out there. Yeah, a couple of comments here. I just want to say, Spooky Deadman, curious to see where the top 30 list will fall into this top 50 list, and will they all make the cut? Yes,
Mm,
that is a great point. I fully expect us to probably do a direct comparison to that top 30 list in that last show in December.
yeah.
That last show in December, strap in, it's going to be like a 6-hour show.
I was gonna say,
Um,
right? That's gonna be
yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot and everything to talk about
That's
there.
right. And before I forget, our next show, folks, we're coming back to on Sunday. It will be March 31st. So,
Yes,
hey, before you know it.
that will be the week after GaryCon, folks. So if you guys are at GaryCon,
Oh,
we
that's
will have a
right.
booth, and
Yeah.
I will be there. So if you're at GaryCon, come check us out, obviously. But this will be a full week after that I get back. So
All
the
right. So
timing
you'll have a
actually
chance
works
to
out.
recover a little
Oh yeah,
bit.
I'll have a chance to recover. Hopefully I still won't be sick after that. but you never know. But yeah, so that's going to be our next show. We're probably going to have a guest that show. We're going to try to have a guest so that we can have a third person to kind of talk through some of these adventures with us. But yeah, so with that, hopefully the transitions worked good. The stats worked really good. So we're really excited about the way the show is kind of shaping up. These shows are shaping up this year, and this is going to be a really fun year. I have to admit,
Yeah.
this is so exciting to kind of do this. And I like all day today, I was kind of like, oh, right, I get to talk about the top 50 list tonight and everything. So it was like one of those really cool things to kind of think about as we're getting ready to do this. So I'm looking forward to the next show already. Remember, folks, the last Sunday of every month,
Yep.
8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when you can expect another show for the entire year as we celebrate the 50th anniversary
Real easy.
of D&D with the 50 greatest adventure modules of all time, according to Goodman Games. And with that, I think we will call it a night.
I think it's a wrap. Good night,
All right.
folks.
Have a good night, folks.